listen, we're going to get started. We're going to give everybody the opportunity to read some of their work. We're going to open up the question and answers, and then we're going to motivate you and prod you that if you have work with you, to present it to everybody here this afternoon. So, Ms. Fulton, why don't you get us started?
Okay. Tell Me, Texas. This poem is inspired. It's about youth being incarcerated and put on death row. And I correspond with one of an inmate named Nanon Williams, so I was inspired to write this poem. And it's in Texas. There's a lot of that happening in Texas. So, illiterate 17, jungle survivor, systematic tangle, police lineups, mothers line up, jumpsuits line up and wind up on death row, courtrooms too superior for justice, tolerate inferior counsel, slated for stoic faces fresh out of the womb, presumed for tombs where lynches bloom in the midst of political chaos, where judges feign, where needles aim to blame or too lethal for infertile lungs to cough out. Incarcerated, 17 self-educates, 17 adopts warrior name in protest of beatdowns and upchucks. COs and inmates hover over blood-covered dignity as celebrities beg governors to recoup innocence. Innocence in blindfold, innocence mothers will never coddle. Racism, a constant scab, a smug evil smudge like vinegar on velvet to vex, to pollute juvenile probability, to sentence to death ethnic behavior in Texas.
Wow.
I wrote this one when I was at work, and they were having a discussion about the Sandy Hook shootings, and I chose not to take part in the discussion, and then I was called antisocial and what's your problem and all this other kind of thing. So I wrote this. My heart, a muscle too torn to grapple gun control. Blasé nipples for ethnic babies. Bullseyes on New York boulevards, all day, every day, all some mother's wren. Rex, reaching for knobs that ain't newsworthy. Now I'm expected to sit and chit-chat about mass murders of today, years later, miles and miles away from brick, black, and broken. Mass murders of today, too late for tears I harbor for brick, black, and broken. My muscle too torn from workouts, arteries enslaved in and graven like frame-ups and lockdowns put down in documentaries about today that play in theaters years later and knocks my throat as I reach for knobs, sling knuckles crack upon to get out before today's hell. A vampire smell to make brick stay out, stay away from knowledge of self. Non-educated now, universities got weapons policies, while black brick can't flower from seed. Yet gossip on the job picks me to converse and rehearse shit someone else spit cause my muscle leaks blood. Policymakers flick and lick, smack in my face and won't embrace my race in a place that can't set pace to my muscle drum. My heart reflects where I'm from.
My name is Olivia Magdelene. I am a poet, I'm a fiction writer, I'm a ghostwriter, and I'm also an abstract artist. And so I kind of do a whole bunch of things. A lot of my work, it comes from my own personal experiences, but the other thing that it comes from is that my background for the last 12 years has been researching comparative religion. So I basically go around to all these different people and I learn about their beliefs so I can find out how belief itself is formulated. It's a very cool psychological concept. So along the way, I get some concepts about where we are as a society, about where we are as people, about where we are within our history. And one of the things that I came up with after I had been, I was studying with the Buddhists, with two different types of Buddhists, the Tibetan Buddhists and the Zen Buddhists. I wrote a poem called Sandcastles, which I'm about to read right now. Okay. We must ask ourselves if we want to evolve above the current human condition, or else we will continue to draw our lines of division to squabble over seashells by the tide. You see, we have warred for sandcastles that are reclaimed by the ocean in the space of 1 hour. We have fallen prey to the lust of domination and the power of absolute authority over tiny dunes of space, so that we shudder, spying those with deep conviction, unsure if a zealous monster lurks behind austere clothing, another messenger sent yet again to tell us that what we are fighting for is merely sand. Okay. And as I said, comparative religion is pretty much my passion. I love to hear about other people's religions. I like to find out what they believe, why they believe it. I like their superstitions, their cultures. There's no little nuance that I don't find fascinating. But every now and then when I'm around the academics, I get a little ticked off. I was sitting on a panel one day, and I had a bunch of people that were talking about their various religions, and I noted a lot of arrogance. So instead of paying attention, I ended up writing this poem called The Black Earth. Humanity has been striving not for the future, but towards its past, to some idealistic era where everything made sense and was preternaturally perfect. So I discern this man-made forest of religion spanning out from the single point of origin. And they can't see the center of this forest for the haughty proudness of all its trees, each boasting to be the tree of life, ignoring that all of them are rooted in the same black earth.
This is Who for Nina Simone with dedication to Oya. Galvanize and fortify selves separated. Constant rumble in found sounds, slap of rhythm and caress of tone, coalesce eagle and panther. A creature to fly and mercy kill in the eye of storm, to confront sniveling nature and demand, who are you? Show me now. Show yourself now. Are you worthy of the skin you're in? Why have legs, brain, heart? Birth is long, difficult, and nowhere, everywhere. This journey can't happen again. Traps of skin, gender, the tribe's tyranny, colonize intellect and imagination, and annihilate. Conform or suffer. Conform to conform till conforming is out of its own control. I, panther incarnate, cry out, ache, shame, attack, paw at boxes, birth eagle's wings, perch atop towers, disintegrating, and tempests of genocide. The falling sky rains gold and silver. Some shrivel and die to try again. Some forge, who am I? They are me, and I them.
Thank you. Now it's open to your questions or comments.
I have a question for all three of you guys. Like, at what age or what made you start writing poems and everything you do?
Well, for me, I started maybe 7, something like that. I saw Nikki Giovanni on a public broadcast television. that had to be around 67, 68, 69, one of them.
Yeah.
And I think I was just more intrigued and influenced by the way she delivered the poems and what she was speaking about. I guess because, you know, in my family, everyone's kind of militant, you know, and so that was in my atmosphere all the time, but it was just straight up talk, conversation, and so forth. But this was a woman who was doing it in poetry, but I could still feel, you know, at the young age that I was, so I tried it. I didn't know what I was talking about or whatever, but I tried it, and it stuck with me, and I just continued to write.
I started around the same age. I was in, I believe, second grade, and I didn't like to talk to people. I was pretty antisocial as a young kid, and but I liked to read a lot, and because I liked the books, and I had a book of poetry and a book of fairy tales, and I decided that I wanted to write like they did because the stories just really captivated me so much. So I got into the habit of around 6 or 7 of taking a notebook outside and sitting underneath the pecan tree. So I grew up in Georgia. So I would sit down and I would just write. And eventually I realized that if I wrote and I gave it to the teacher, she thought this was really cool, and I got awards and, you know, little lollipops and all kinds of trips and everything for doing this. So then it just became something that I've always done. So poetry was the first thing, and then I moved into other types of writing later on, but poetry was the first.
I was an avid reader. It was sort of my escape, and actually not just an escape, but like a way to get understanding about the world around me. And I mean, and my situation was that my family, I grew up in New Orleans, and my family had moved from Opelousas, Louisiana, to New Orleans when I was like 5, and so compared to being around like family members, cousins, you know, like and running and playing in trees and, you know, on farms and things like that, it was like New Orleans, and we integrated the block. You know what I mean? And my brother and I integrated the school. You know what I mean? So it was just like, it was really, really difficult for a very long time. In 7th grade, there was a book called Black Poets around. So I picked that book up and devoured it because I didn't hear anybody talking about stuff, you know. I was like trying to negotiate, being so like this alien basically, and, you know, like during my childhood. So I think that was kind of my awakening about the power of poetry, and like the power of poetry and the power of words. And poetry was very different from like reading prose. That experience was really different. So, and so it's like subsequently I've used poetry sort of as my own sort of release, kind of journalistic diary, etc. And then, you know, it's like I've gotten like I think like what really brought things home to me was getting to share in workshop with other poets, and that process of getting and like hearing how, you know, like how, I mean, it's like you look at a poem and it's like this long in print, right? But it's like you can write pages about it, you know, like on different, like all these different layers, and I love that. I love that and that's what I try to do, like in my work. I don't know, you know, it's like and so it always shifts and changes, just like life. So that's kind of weird.
Thank you.
This has been, I think, a quite joyous afternoon for Olivia, Tara, Cyd, Lisa, myself, Joe. Hopefully your spirit has been enriched. Hopefully if you write, you will continue to write. Hopefully if somebody says you cannot do, you won't believe them, and you won't let those words take over your spirit, because you can. And the only thing I invite all of you all to do is to visit Aduna. We're at www.aduna.org. I put my card out if you want to submit work for our consideration to publish. You can. We have a submissions process, but send it to me. Remind me that, you know, you were at this event, and we'll go from there. And instead of me talking about it, doing it, the poets who were here, we published their work, and they could probably best talk about the relationship that we try to build with poets. That way I don't have to talk about it. But Joe, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Everybody here, thank you. You made our evening wonderful.